Chapter 1. On our golden wedding anniversary, my husband, the regiment commander, lost his true love to illness. That very night, Leander slit his wrist and took his own life. When Rosie went to close his account, the clerk said, "Ma'am, the system shows that you and Leander are not legally married. You cannot close his account." Stunned, she quickly produced the well-worn marriage certificate, its edges frayed from frequent handling. "That's impossible. Leander and I have been married for 50 years. The clerk pulled up the records, his expression uneasy. "Your marital status is listed as single, yet under Mr. Leander's spouse registration, the name Adam appears. Do you know her?" Rosie's mind exploded with a deafening buzz. The marriage certificate slipped from her hand to the floor. She stared at the name Adam on the computer screen, her vision clouding, fingers shaking uncontrollably. Rosie and Leander were seen by outsiders as a devoted, loving couple. Only she knew that deep in his heart, there was always someone he truly loved. And Adam was Leander's true love, the one he could never have. Clutching the marriage certificate, Rosie stepped into the car in a daze. The car stopped in front of the military compound gate. Just as she was about to get out, voices from the living room caught her attention. Her son and daughter-in-law were talking. "Dad's only dying wish was to be buried with Mom. I've already chosen the burial plot. Tomorrow, they will be laid to rest, and we will announce publicly that Adam is truly Dad's lawful wife." The daughter-in-law's reluctant voice slipped through the cracks. "Honey, are we really doing the right thing? After all, Rosie took care of Dad for many years. Although she's not your biological mother, she has loved you deeply all these years." Smack! The glass cup crashed harshly onto the floor. The son's voice rose, seething with anger. "Don't you dare mention that old woman to me. If she hadn't insisted on marrying into the Koo household, how could my biological mother have been driven out by the Koo family? She has long usurped the position of Mrs. Koo. Now it's time to give it back." Rosie stood outside the door, feeling as if she had plunged into an ice cellar. A heart-wrenching pain spread through her chest. It turned out that not only was the marriage certificate fake, but even the foster son she had lovingly raised was actually Adam and Leander's biological child. 50 years of marriage she had painstakingly built had turned out to be a complete and utter farce. Overcome with rage and despair, she spat up a mouthful of fresh blood and collapsed. When her eyes opened again, Rosie was reborn. It was 1980 again, the very first year she married Leander. Right then, Leander glared at her with furious eyes. "Rosie, how long do you plan to keep this up? I've already married you, so why are you still trying to push her back to the countryside?" That familiar voice sent a shiver through her entire body. Rosie lifted her gaze and met his dark eyes, blazing with rage so fierce it could shatter her to dust. In her past life, after learning of Adam's existence, she tried to buy her off to send her back to the countryside, cutting all ties with Leander. Turning around, she told Leander what had happened, igniting a fierce argument between them. Back then, she apologized and softened again and again, desperate to save their marriage. Looking back now, she was truly foolish in her past life. Pulling herself from her thoughts, Rosie looked up, free of past panic and excuses, and said calmly, "Don't worry. It won't happen again." Leander sneered coldly, frost in his eyes. "You really think I believe that? Rosie, remember this, I can tolerate anything you do, except provocation of Adam. She is the one I would risk my life to protect in this lifetime." The door slammed shut with a heavy thud. Rosie's heart felt as if something had seized it mercilessly. She had been so foolish in her past life, wasting her prime years on someone like that. Now, living this life again, she vowed never to repeat the same mistake. Chapter 2. The next morning, Rosie came to the cultural troupe to hand in her resignation. "Rosie, you are the most outstanding dancer in the cultural troupe, with a bright future ahead. Are you certain you want to resign?" Hearing the leader's regret, Rosie nodded firmly. "Secretary, I am certain." Secretary Song nodded and took the resignation letter. "All right. Resignation approval takes 10 days. Rosie nodded, then turned and walked out of the cultural troupe. A year ago, Rosie's father was injured in an accident, prompting the entire family to move to City B to start anew. Only she stayed behind in the provincial capital. For Leander, now, she finally understood. Why cling to what was never hers? In 10 days, she would leave Leander. leave the provincial capital, and begin a new life. Rosie returned to the family compound and found two new people at home. Leander sat on the sofa. Adam buried his face in his hands, his shoulders trembling gently, as if crushed by unbearable grief. She turned around, her expression altered, and walked back to her room. Just as Leander's cold voice echoed from behind, "Rosie, stop right there." Her steps faltered, but she didn't look back. Adam was so terrified when you tried to send her away that he couldn't sleep for days and nights. "From now on, she'll live here with us." He paused, then added, "To get along better from now on, you should first go apologize to Adam." Rosie turned to meet his gaze, her heart pounding as if it had been struck hard. Suddenly, she recalled that when they first started dating, he responded to everything she said, even his words were soft and gentle. But after Adam showed up, he seemed like a different man, constantly pressuring her to apologize. "What if I don't apologize?" Rosie asked calmly. Leander heard those words. Fury surged in his eyes as he stood, approaching her and gripping her arm tightly with his right hand. "Rosie, stop throwing a tantrum. I'm not wrong. Why should I apologize?" Rosie's calm and resolute voice only deepened the coldness in Leander's eyes, and his grip tightened as the two stood locked in a standoff. Adam stepped forward. She lifted her tear-filled eyes and tugged at his sleeve. "Leander, let it go. I don't mind suffering a little. After all, you and Rosie are the real husband and wife." Leander lowered his head to her, gently brushing the tears from her face. "Adam, I will fight to set this right for you." Rosie was pulled to the lakeside by him. Before she could react, Leander seized the back of her neck, staring into his cold eyes. Rosie felt her heart shatter, trembling all over. "Leander, have you forgotten that I'm afraid of water?" "I haven't forgotten. It's precisely because I know you're afraid of water that I want to punish you." His ruthless words cut into her chest like a sharp blade. The next moment, Leander gripped her wrist with sudden force and shoved Rosie into the lake. Her mouth and nose flooded with water. The choking panic surged instantly. She tried to grasp something, but her limbs felt gripped by invisible hands dragging her down, on the edge of death. Rosie faintly recalled the time 3 years ago when she had slipped into the water, and he defied his friend's protests to dive in and save her. She also saw him promise his parents he would cherish her forever. But now, for Adam, he was punishing her by forcing her beneath the water. As her consciousness began to fade, Rosie was suddenly yanked out of the water. She slumped by the pool's edge, coughing violently, water dripping from her hair, utterly disheveled. Leander looked down at her coldly. "Rosie, if you don't behave next time, I'll sink you to the bottom of the lake, and no one will come for you." Watching their figures recede into the distance, her numb heart flared with sharp pain, dragging her heavy body back to the family compound. She passed the study where she clearly heard Adam's soft voice. "Leander, why do you treat me so well? With you like this, I can't bear to leave." Through the crack in the door, she saw Leander holding someone close, his voice tender. "You fool. You are my wife. Of course I must treat you well. From now on, I won't let you leave me." Rosie's blood ran cold. Husband and wife, what a perfect couple. Chapter 3. Rosie returned to the room and began to pack. In her past life, she would have treasured anything related to Leander. Notes he had casually written, the pen he used, the red scarf he gave her the first time, and the Shanghai brand watch he gave her on their wedding day. Rosie packed everything up and tossed it all into the trash bin downstairs. She threw the last box into the bin as a gentle breeze lifted her long hair. She stared at the pile of trash before her, suddenly feeling a flicker of absurdity. The things she once held dear were now worthless. Rosie turned to go back and ran right into Leander coming home. He frowned, glancing at the trash bin behind her, and asked, puzzled, "What did you throw away?" At his question, Rosie kept her expression calm, tugging at her lip. "Just some garbage." Leander didn't push further. After a moment, he said, "By the way, the military unit is holding a social mixer tonight. Get ready. We'll go together." In her previous life, after marrying Leander, she was hailed as a loving couple within the military unit. He always maintained the image of a devoted husband in public, and it was precisely because of that she was deceived for 50 years. Thinking of this, Rosie stifled the storm in her heart and said coldly, "I don't want to go." She raised her leg to leave, but Leander caught her wrist. His voice was gentle, but the tone left no room for argument. Rosie, what happened this morning was me acting on impulse. But you must accompany me to tonight's party. Just then, Adam poked his head out from upstairs. Her soft voice floated down. Leander, I still want some chestnut pastry from the north side of town. Could you bring some back? All right, I'll go get it. Leander heard her and looked up. Responding gently, he pulled back his gaze and turned to Rosie. Go upstairs and get ready. I'll bring you some mango pastry later. Watching his retreating back, Rosie suddenly forced a smile. But inside, she was hollow and desolate. So he had forgotten that she was severely allergic to mango. But she would no longer feel sadness, because her love for him was slowly fading away. The social mixer was held in the military unit's canteen. Leander holding Rosie had just stepped inside when whispers immediately broke out around them. Oh my God, Captain Koo is so gentle with Rosie. He truly lives up to his reputation as a wife-pampering maniac. No doubt about it. This afternoon, I saw Captain Koo on his bike, heading to the northern part of town to queue for chestnut pastries. I was so jealous. Rosie marrying Captain Koo is incredibly lucky. Surrounded by envious whispers, Rosie felt nothing stir within her. No sooner had she sat down than a sharp cramp gripped her lower abdomen. Leander noticed her distress and gently asked, "What's wrong? Is it that time of the month?" Feeling the warm flow beneath her, Rosie nodded weakly, her face drained of color. She struggled with severe uterine cold. Each month, her period was sheer agony. But today, submerged in the icy lake, her abdominal pain intensified dramatically. Upon hearing this, Leander removed his military jacket and laid it over her belly, then sent someone to the family compound to fetch clothes and brown sugar. The evening gala was in full, fiery swing. Leander stood attentively by Rosie's side, gently massaging her stomach now and then, even personally fetching hot water for her. Looking at his tender expression, Rosie was briefly lost in a daze. Memories flashed through her mind like a swift carousel. He used to stay up whole nights by her side when she was sick, always there to offer careful comfort whenever she felt helpless. Captain Koo, the things you requested have arrived. The familiar voice pulled Rosie back from her thoughts. She looked up and saw Adam, soaked through and through. Chapter 4. Leander's face suddenly darkened. He took the item from her hand and immediately draped the coat that had been covering Rosie's abdomen over her shoulders. Didn't I send someone to get it? Why did you come yourself? His voice trembled with both concern and pain. Adam explained in a shaky voice. Comrade Jean twisted his ankle when he went out. I feared Rosie urgently needed it, so I delivered it myself. I just didn't expect the rain to start pouring so suddenly. His uncontrolled outburst caught the attention of many comrades. Seeing this, Leander suppressed his emotions, gently handed the paper bag to Rosie, and avoided looking at her. Rosie, I'll stay with you. No, I can manage on my own. Rosie rejected him coldly, took the bag, and headed straight to the bathroom. When she came out dressed, Leander was already waiting by the bathroom door, but Adam was nowhere in sight. With gentle eyes, he took her hand and led her inside. The party had already moved into the dancing segment. At the edge of the dance floor, he reached out his right hand to her. Rosie, will you dance with me? Rosie didn't want to become the subject of gossip over her private affairs. When she saw Leander invite her to dance, she could only place her hand in his palm. The warm yellow light bathed them both. Leander's right hand rested on her waist, and her skirt slowly blossomed with every turn. Their perfectly synchronized steps drew continuous applause from the onlookers. Comrade, let go of me! A piercing cry shattered Leander's rhythm on the dance floor. Rosie turned toward the sound and saw Adam being grabbed by a drunken man trying to take advantage of him. Tears brimmed in her eyes, filled with sorrow. She could vividly feel the displeasure emanating from him. The next moment, Leander shook off Rosie and dashed straight towards Adam. He punched the drunken man to the ground, then immediately pulled Adam into a tight embrace. Comforting him, he shook her off with such force that Rosie lost her balance, stumbling back several steps before collapsing to the ground in disarray. Suddenly, the music cut off sharply. Whispers and murmurs erupted around them, relentless and unceasing. Didn't they say Captain Koo loves his wife more than anything? So why would he risk his wife's safety today for a stranger? Love? What love? To me, It's all just a performance. I heard Captain Koo and Adam have known each other for ages. Everyone says those two have been involved for a long time. Poor Rosie, completely humiliated on the spot. Why feel sorry for her? It's her own failure. She couldn't even keep her husband in check. Rosie silently endured it all, her heart, torn and battered, no longer stirred with any hope. She forced herself to stand up, only to hear a sudden uproar nearby. Turning around, she saw a stack of tables and chairs suddenly topple beside her. Rosie was caught off guard and struck hard. Bang! An icy pain swept through her body as the table and chair crashed into her back. Bleeding through, her vision was rapidly fading. Before losing consciousness, Rosie saw Leander holding Adam with a worried expression as they left the party. From start to finish, his eyes never once turned toward her, barely clinging to life. Chapter 5. When Rosie woke, she was already in the health clinic. Rosie stared at the ceiling and heard Adam sobbing outside the door. It's all my fault. If I hadn't had that accident, Rosie wouldn't have been struck. Captain Koo, please punish me severely. Through the hospital ward window, she clearly saw Leander tenderly wiping away her tears. Adam, this isn't your fault. Besides, Rosie only suffered superficial wounds. She'll be fine after a few days of rest. I'll take care of this. So don't blame yourself. Rosie's breath suddenly caught, her fingers tightening involuntarily. She had 10 stitches on her scapula, and yet to him it was nothing more than a superficial injury. Leander, do you even have a heart? With a creak, Leander pushed open the hospital ward door and walked in. When he saw she was awake, he hurried forward, took her hand, his eyes unusually gentle. Rosie, last night was my fault for letting you get hurt. I'll be taking care of you at the health clinic these next few days. When he spoke those words, it felt as if he were granting her the greatest gift. But sadly, she didn't need it. Rosie withdrew her hand, turned her back on him, her tone icy. Go away. I'm tired. She rested at the health clinic for 5 days. During those days, Leander put aside his work and stayed by her side, caring for her every moment. He brought her meals daily, helped her exercise, and even held her hands gently when the nurse changed her dressings. In her previous life, she would have been moved to tears, but now, she only felt repulsed. Back at home, Rosie was stopped in her tracks by Adam. She held a bowl of chicken soup, looking utterly pitiable. Rosie, it's all my fault that you got hurt and ended up in the hospital. I made this chicken soup just for you. Please, have some, won't you? Rosie wanted nothing to do with her. She shook her head in refusal and turned to walk back to her room. Rosie, is it that you don't want to forgive me? Leander, just returned from the military unit, frowned slightly at the scene before him and approached, holding the bowl of chicken soup. Rosie, this was specially made for you by Adam. Drink it. Seeing the threat in his eyes, Rosie's hands, hanging loosely at her sides, suddenly clenched tight. Leander, I told you, I don't want to drink. Hearing that, Leander stepped closer, gently tucking her stray hair behind her ear. His words brooked no refusal. Rosie, be good, drink it. She knew perfectly well that if she didn't drink this bowl of chicken soup today, Leander wouldn't relent. Taking a deep breath, Rosie lifted the bowl and drank the chicken soup down in one go. Is that better? Handing the empty bowl back to Leander, Rosie turned and retreated to her room to rest. That night, she was roused by a relentless, tickling sensation. Rosie clutched her chest in agony. Only when she turned on the light did she see her arms were covered in a rash. This was a sign of an allergic reaction. But she hadn't eaten any mangoes today. Her breathing grew more ragged as she remembered Adam's chicken soup from that night. In the next moment, Rosie stormed out of the room, grabbing Adam's wrist and demanding, Adam, what did you put in the chicken soup? Adam, looking innocent, replied, nothing special. I just added some mango to the chicken soup for flavor. Didn't you like it? Is it good? Rosie gave a cold laugh, gripping tighter. Adam, was this on purpose? Adam shook his head, eyes watering. Rosie, I don't know what you're talking about. You've really hurt me. Suddenly, a cold voice came from the doorway. Rosie, stop. Leander strode forward, his face darkening as he saw Adam's reddened wrist. Rosie, Adam only meant well making you soup. what are you freaking out about now? Chapter 6. She's lost her mind? Rosie rolled up her sleeve, revealing a rash covering her arm. Leander, look carefully. She added mango to the chicken soup and triggered my allergy. Don't I have the right to confront her? Leander, his gaze darting, continued defensively. Adam didn't even know you were allergic to mango. Why don't you just take some allergy medicine? Besides, you know your body is unusual. Didn't you think to ask before drinking? His cold, accusing words pierced her chest like a sharp blade. Rosie tried to argue, but her allergy symptoms left her gasping for breath, the rash spreading up her neck. She struggled to grasp his arm, her voice meek. Leander, please, take me to the health clinic. I really feel awful. Leander heard her words, grabbed allergy medicine from the nearby cabinet, and tossed it before her. His voice cold and sharp. Stop pretending. Why would you go to a health clinic for allergies? Just take some allergy medicine. Rosie's vision blurred as she watched Leander lead Adam back to the room. Her heart sank utterly, summoning her last ounce of strength. She swallowed 2 allergy pills, then collapsed heavily to the floor, losing consciousness. Rosie was roused by the cold. She struggled to rise from the floor. Outside, night had already fallen. As the rash on her body slowly faded, Rosie staggered back towards the room. As she passed Leander's room, she heard Adam's soft voice. Leander, do I look good in this? My Adam looks good in anything. His tone was gentle, completely at odds with the coldness he'd shown moments earlier. Rosie sneered and stepped into the room. Because of her allergies, she had stayed home resting for 3 days until the rash finally cleared. The next morning, Rosie was roused by a sharp pinch. She opened her eyes to see Leander. His face twisted with anger. His cold voice barely contained a fierce fury. Tell me, where is Adam? With a nearly savage force, Rosie was strangled until she struggled to breathe. I don't know what you mean. You let me go. Leander pressed his lips tight, his grip tightening, the menace in his eyes clear as day. Rosie, stop pretending. Who else but you would kidnap her? Adam only accidentally triggered your allergy. Is it necessary for you to be so cruel as to kidnap a helpless woman? Gazing into his cold, merciless eyes, Rosie felt her heart shudder violently. He hadn't even bothered to check. He was already convinced she was the one who kidnapped Adam. I did not kidnap her. As for where she went, I don't know. At those words, Leander furrowed his brow even deeper, tightening his grip. Rosie, you're truly a venomous woman. Even now, you still deny it. I'll make you pay for your defiance. He suddenly shrugged her off, his eyes sharp and ice-cold. Rosie was hauled into the study by him. Her hands and feet were bound, leaving her utterly helpless. Rosie, I'm asking you again, where is Adam? Seeing the fury blazing in his eyes, Rosie's eyelids fluttered, her voice trembling yet familiar. I don't know. Not knowing. Huh? Today, I'll make you understand the price of lying. With that, Leander grabbed the whip from the wall and lashed it out. The first lash sliced through the air and struck down. Rosie curled up in pain. Cold sweat drenched her back. Before she could even recover, the second lash came crashing down with fierce wind. Rosie blacked out as the searing pain radiated through her entire body. Whip after whip rained down. Rosie was beaten 10 times in total. By the time she was untied, blood had soaked through her clothes. She lay on the floor in utter disarray, gazing at Leander's indifferent eyes, her numb heart erupting in sharp pain. Leander, you truly are merciless. For Adam, you personally struck her 10 times with the whip. Chapter 7. When Rosie awoke, she found herself lying on a hospital bed in the health clinic. Rosie, the doctor has already treated the wound on your back. The captain has been away on business these past few days and specifically sent me to care for you. The nurse's words drifted into her ears, and Rosie lifted the corner of her mouth into a cold smile. Handling business? He's probably with Adam. The injury on her back was severe, and Rosie stayed in the hospital for 5 days. During those 5 days, Leander never once appeared. Today was the day Rosie was discharged from the hospital. She had just arrived home when Adam blocked her path. Rosie, I'm pregnant. It's a child between me and Leander. She caressed her flat belly, her eyes shining with pride and triumph. Having endured so much in her past life, Rosie felt no shock at the news of the pregnancy. She was eager to see how, without her, Leander and Adam would raise the child. Well, congratulations. Anything else? If not, I'm going back to my room. Seeing her calm and serene expression, Adam was stunned, utterly unprepared for such a reaction from her. The next moment, Adam gripped her wrist tightly. Rosie, have some shame. Leander was forced to marry you. He never loved you. Do you realize the marriage certificate between you and Leander is fake? He secretly registered with me to keep me. We are the true couple. And you? You're nothing but the mistress clinging to Mrs. Koo's title. Now that I have a child, if you have any sense, you'll leave right away. Adam didn't want his child branded illegitimate after birth, so he finally revealed the truth about the marriage certificate. She intended to use this to force Rosie to leave, but no matter what she said, Rosie remained utterly calm. So calm, it unsettled her. Just then, the sound of the door opening came from outside. It was Leander returning, with a plan in mind. Adam curled her lips, crashed straight into the corner of the nearby table, then put on a pitiful expression and cried out, "Aw, my stomach hurts so much." Bang! The front door slammed open, and Leander rushed in, anxiety written all over his face. Seeing Adam's ashen face, he sprinted over in 3 quick steps and 1 long stride. "Adam, are you okay? Are you hurt anywhere?" Adam clung to him, tears streaking down his cheeks. "Leander, Rosie shoved me just now in a fit of anger. My stomach hurts so badly. Do you think our baby is all right? I'm so scared." Sobbing. At those words, Leander felt the blood in his body surge upward. He held Adam close, then shot a dark glare at Rosie. "Rosie, how long do you intend to keep this up?" Noticing the displeasure in his eyes, Rosie explained softly, "I didn't push her. There are only 2 of you at home. If it wasn't you, then who else? Do you really think Adam would just walk right into it?" Rage rising within him, Leander raised his leg and kicked her in the stomach. A brutal force slammed into her lower abdomen. Rosie arched in agony as spasms swept over her, darkening her vision. Lying on the ground, she clearly saw Adam's hand dangling outside his bent arm, faintly raising his middle finger, a gesture both boastful and defiant. Rosie curled her lips into a cold smile, her heart long since numb. After a long while, the pain in her lower abdomen gradually eased. At that moment, a knock sounded at the door. "Rosie, Secretary Song called earlier. Your resignation approval is ready. Come by when you can to pick it up." The guard's voice came through the receiver, and a flicker of excitement lit Rosie's eyes. It was the only piece of good news she'd heard lately. She could finally leave. After hanging up, Rosie winced but forced herself to her feet and returned to her room to pack. She didn't have much, just a single handbag. After tidying up, she took the forged marriage certificate from the cabinet and leafed through it. Rosie only then did she realize how crude the marriage certificate truly was. There wasn't even a stamp on it, and yet she had been deceived for so long. Exhaling sharply, Rosie tore the marriage certificate to pieces without hesitation and turned away. The train station swarmed with people coming and going. Rosie held her train ticket tightly and located her seat. Before the train departed, Rosie gazed out the window and exhaled deeply. "Leander, it's over between us. From now on, the bridge stays with the bridge. The road stays with the road. Never see you again." Chapter 8. Provincial Hospital. After a series of tests, Adam's unborn child was unharmed, with no signs of a threatened miscarriage. Only then did Leander finally feel relieved. Inside the health clinic, Adam leaned against Leander's chest, her voice trembling with distress. "Leander, I'm so grateful you got back in time today. Otherwise, the baby and I would have been in serious danger." I was truly terrified. Hearing this, Leander raised his hand to wipe away her tears, his voice gentle. "Adam, don't be afraid. Before you're discharged, I'll send Rosie back to the countryside for a while. After that, no one will ever hurt you or the baby." A flicker of surprise lit Adam's eyes, quickly replaced by worry as he said, "Leander, this can't go on. After all, Rosie is still your legal wife." Before she could finish, Leander silenced her with a kiss. When the kiss ended, Adam's face was flushed bright red. "Adam, we are the true couple. I'll handle everything. Our baby will be born safe and sound." I swear. Having soothed Adam, Leander rushed back to the family compound, preparing to discuss with Rosie their move back to the countryside. This was the best solution he could think of at the time, though it felt somewhat unfair to Rosie. He promised that from now on, he would make more time to be with her. Leander returned home. The living room was empty. Rosie. Leander's calls rang out through the living room, but no one answered. He frowned, pushed open the door to her room, and was met with utter emptiness. The wardrobe and desk were completely bare. The group photo of the two, which she had carefully hung on the wall, had disappeared without a trace. A bad premonition stirred in Leander's heart. He hurried into the room and saw the torn marriage certificate in the trash bin. At this moment, Leander was utterly panicked. He ransacked every room in the house, but there was no sign of Rosie anywhere. Leander knitted his brows, his eyes flickering to a letter lying on the table. He opened it, and before him was Rosie's handwriting. Leander, your marriage certificate is a complete forgery. It's over between us. Don't ever show your face again. Leander gazed at the letter in his hands, stunned, unable to recover for a long while. Rosie had gone. This truth spun wildly in Leander's mind, as if someone had ripped out a chunk of his heart. The pain so raw he could barely draw a breath. His breath hitched, and the hand clutching the envelope shook uncontrollably. After a long moment, he snapped back to reality, rushed out of the house, and found the guard. His voice sharp, 10 minutes. Find Rosie for me. Understood. Captain Koo. Back home, Leander Koo sank onto the edge of the bed. The room still carried her scent, yet she had disappeared without a trace. He had been forced by his parents to marry Rosie, young and defiant, unwilling to let others control his fate. He devised a plan, registering a fake marriage with her, intending to confess later and set them both free. But after the wedding, Rosie's tender care and gentle affection consumed him. He concealed the forged marriage certificate, selfishly wanting to bask in Rosie's care while remaining devoted to Adam. Yet he never expected Rosie would find out and simply walk away. It caught him utterly off guard. Staring at the empty room, Leander was overcome with pain. Rosie, how could you be so heartless? To leave without a single word. Chapter 9. Leander lingered in the room for a long while. Only when the operator knocked did he sluggishly set down the bottle and move to the telephone room. The call connected, and Adam's playful voice came through. Leander, when are you coming over to keep me company? I'm all alone here in the hospital ward, and I'm so scared. Hearing this, Leander shook off the haze clouding his mind and replied calmly, I'm on my way. Not long after hanging up, a security guard hurried over. Captain Koo, I haven't found any trace of Rosie. At those words, Leander's thin lips pressed tight, and his dark eyes blazed with cold fury. Keep looking. Dig 3 feet deep if you have to. Find Rosie at all costs. After uttering those words, Leander left the family compound. Angry, on the way to the hospital, he furiously stomped on the pedal, as if trying to unleash the storm raging inside him. What should have been a 15-minute trip took him only half that time. Pushing open the door to the hospital ward, Leander was immediately wrapped in Adam's tight embrace. Leander, you finally came back. I was starting to think you wouldn't be here with me tonight. By the way, how did your conversation with Rosie go? Did she agree? At the mention of Rosie, Leander's cold, hard eyes flickered with a sharp intensity. Rosie is gone. Adam looked confused. Gone? Where did she go? Taking a deep breath, Leander helped her sit up on the hospital bed and spoke softly. Rosie found out about the fake marriage certificate. She tore it up and left. I have no idea where she is or any clue to her whereabouts. At those words, Adam's eyes suddenly gleamed with hope. But catching the loneliness in Leander's face out of the corner of his eye, Adam immediately put on a guilty expression. It's all my fault. If I hadn't shown up, Rosie wouldn't have discovered the certificate was fake. I'm the one who caused the rift between you. Leander lowering his head to the tears glistening in her eyes. He reached out and pulled her tightly into his arms. Adam, this isn't your fault. If she wants to leave, then let her go. The position of the captain's wife isn't hers alone. Once you're out of the hospital, I'll explain everything to the higher-ups and make it clear that you are the rightful captain's wife. Leander, are you really serious? Adam's eyes sparkled with excitement. Although she had the marriage certificate with Leander, She was always kept in the shadows. Now that Rosie wisely chose to leave, she became the legitimate captain's wife. In the future, the child she carries will be born, no longer a bastard. Of course it's true. Upon hearing this, Adam eagerly pressed a kiss to his lips. Leander, don't worry, from now on, I'll take good care of you and the baby, and be your rightful wife. Leander saw Adam so excited, yet felt no joy in his heart. Instead, a wave of anxiety and insecurity welled up inside him. Late at night, Leander lay on the hospital bed, his mind filled with Rosie's image. He had met her for the first time 2 years ago at a banquet, when the bright sunlight lit her face as she blocked his path. Comrade Koo, you're so handsome, may I pursue you? Leander Koo had never met a woman so bold. She coldly rejected him outright. But she didn't get angry. Instead, she found new ways every day to accidentally run into him, even going so far as to cook for him and deliver the meals to the military camp. She chased after him relentlessly for an entire year. Later, when his career was sabotaged by enemies, his parents, for the sake of his future, forced him to marry her. From that moment on, his feelings for her plummeted. Later, Adam came from the countryside to find him, and out of spite, he secretly registered their marriage. Now, Leander somewhat regrets it, regretting that rash decision back then. Chapter 10. Adam was in the hospital for 3 days but couldn't wait to get discharged. In response, Leander agreed without hesitation. Immediately after discharge, he reported the matter to legitimize Adam as the captain's wife. Upon hearing this, Adam was deeply moved, yet his expression remained quietly composed. For the safety of the child in Adam's womb, Leander refused to share a room with her and instead slept in Rosie's old room. Lying in bed, his mind was a chaotic storm of thoughts. It had been a full day since he revealed the truth about Adam. No one in the family compound was unaware. Rosie, why hasn't she reached out to him yet? She used to be fiercely jealous, never allowing another woman near him. But this time, she hasn't come out at all. Has she truly decided never to return? Just then, the tightly closed door was pushed open, shattering Leander's thoughts of escape. He turned toward the sound and saw Adam walk in, looking hurt and wronged. Leander, I can't sleep without you beside me. Will you come over and be with me and the baby? Leander hesitated for a moment upon seeing her like this, then rose from bed and came to her side. All right, I'll stay with you. At these words, Adam smiled, her eyes curved like crescent moons. Leander, I always knew you were the best. The two of them held hands and walked into the master bedroom together. Adam leaned into his embrace, her fragile hand tracing over his clothes, her eyes soft and seductive. Leander, we haven't been intimate for so long. Tonight, let's. Before she could finish, Leander understood exactly what she meant. Adam, you're carrying our child now. You can't. Hearing his refusal, Adam pouted, but his hands kept moving downward. Leander, it's okay. Just be gentle. Our baby will be fine. Seeing him remain motionless, she took the initiative to kiss his thin lips, her hands resting on his shoulders. At the same time, Leander felt a sudden surge of burning desire flood through him. He growled softly, cupping the back of her head to deepen the kiss. In an instant, the room thickened with electric tension, and he reached out to close the curtains. Leander held her waist with one hand while tearing off her clothes with the other, his lips landing on her collarbone and gradually drifting downward. Adam was kissed until left wanting, her legs locked tightly around his back. Rosie, Leander whispered, almost unconsciously. His whisper cleared the haze in Adam's bewildered eyes. She stiffened, pushed him away with a raised hand, and, her eyes blurred with tears, asked, Leander, who were you just calling? Only then did Leander realize he had said the wrong thing. While kissing Adam moments ago, what had flooded his mind were Rosie's soft waist and full lips. He was helplessly drawn and lost to her. Leander rolled out of bed, turning his back to her as he said, It's nothing. You must have misheard. Just rest for now. He turned to leave but was firmly grabbed by the hem of his clothes by Adam. Leander, are you still thinking about Rosie? Have you fallen for her? Her sudden question startled Leander deeply. Quickly, he regained his composure and spoke calmly. Adam, you really did mishear earlier. Rosie is gone now. Don't bring her up again. I'm tired tonight. I'm going back to the spare room. You should get some rest early. As the words fell, Leander brushed her hand aside and hurried out of the master bedroom. Yet his retreat was marked by a trace of panic. Chapter 11. Bang! The door slammed shut suddenly. Adam sat on the bed, a flash of venom in his eyes. She could never have imagined that Leander would actually call Rosie's name in bed. Was he really so reluctant to let her go? Even in moments of passion, he couldn't forget her? Because of this incident, Adam lay awake all night, tossing and turning, and made a decision. Rosie, this curse, must never remain in this world. As she pondered this, a thought took root in her mind. Since that night's incident, Leander had been at the barracks training new recruits, sharing meals and quarters with them. During this time, Adam went to the phone booth every day, calling to ask when he would return. Thinking of the child she carried, Leander returned home after training the first batch of recruits. To make up for that night, he deliberately went to the mall and bought her favorite canned goods and fabric. When he got home, Leander overheard Adam's cold, ruthless voice. I'll give you 3 more days. You must find Rosie and kill her. Leander paused at the door, his dark, indifferent eyes flashing with shock. Adam had always seemed gentle and obedient before him. How could he speak such poisonous words today? Before he could process it, a male voice spoke up. Mrs. Koo, are you truly determined to destroy us completely? No matter what. Rosie Lee is the eldest daughter of the Lee family. If you harm her, the Lee family will never let it slide. Hearing this, Adam sneered coldly, his words thick with contempt. What is there to fear? I'm the captain's wife now. Even if the Lee family finds out, they wouldn't dare touch me. Leander loves only me. Previously, I deliberately arranged for someone to kidnap and frame Rosie. She was lashed 10 times. Later, I added mango to the chicken soup and purposely bumped into the corner of the table. Leander trusted only me. Once this is settled, you won't be left out of the benefits. Besides, even if things are exposed, I will protect you. Her light, careless words struck Leander like a bolt of lightning. These words put the man opposite at ease, and he quickly responded. Mrs. Koo, rest assured, I will make sure Rosie is thoroughly removed. Leander stood at the doorway, his chest heaving violently, as a whirlwind of emotions churned inside him. He never expected that Adam would turn so cruel. Her words echoed in his mind. Leander recalled Rosie defending herself again and again, insisting she hadn't kidnapped anyone. Yet he not only refused to listen but also had her whipped 10 times. He truly deserves to die. Thinking of all he had done before, a tide of regret flooded over him. Consumed by anger, Leander only stepped inside with a cold glare after the masked man had left. The moment Adam saw him, a smile blossomed on his face. The next moment, she hurried to his side, looping her arm around his shoulder, her voice soft and tender. Leander, you're finally home. The baby and I have missed you so much. Later, I'll cook for you myself, okay? Looking down at her tender expression, Leander snorted coldly and gripped her neck fiercely with his right hand. Under the nearly savage force, Adam was almost suffocating. His face flushed. Leander, you let go of me first. We need to talk this through. Hearing this, Leander tightened his grip again. Adam, I heard every word of your conversation just now. I was utterly blind back then, to have been ensnared by a venomous woman like you. Adam's lips trembled, a flicker of panic flashing through his eyes. Chapter 12. Adam was being strangled, struggling for breath. As her consciousness began to blur, Leander threw her to the ground and looked down on him coldly, but his eyes were no longer gentle. Beneath it all, disgust gave way to disappointment. Adam, tomorrow I will file for divorce. At those words, Adam's pupils constricted sharply. The next moment, she grasped his pant leg desperately, her voice sharp. No, Leander, you can't do this to me. I'm carrying your child. You can't divorce me. I won't agree. Leander, I'm only doing this because I love you. If you don't want me, I'll stop. Please don't abandon me. I've followed you all these years. How can you divorce me over this? Think about the child in my womb, please? Her desperate pleas made Leander halt in his tracks. He lowered his head to see her tear-streaked face, his expression still cold and unyielding. Adam, The one I loved was always the gentle, kind you used to be, but now, you keep framing Rosie, forcing me to punish her. Now that she's gone, you send others to keep hurting her. This poisonous version of you is a stranger to me. Divorce is the last dignity I'll grant you." With that, Leander turned and walked back to his room. Adam sank to the ground, watching his distant back. The pleading, pitiful look in his eyes vanished instantly, replaced by one filled with pure malice. For Mrs. Ku's title, she has endured so much over the years. Now that she has finally been officially recognized, she absolutely will not agree to a divorce. Adam placed his right hand on his abdomen, silently making a firm decision within. Her only bargaining chip was this child. Back in the study, Leander immediately drafted a divorce certificate. In light of their many years together and the fact that she was still carrying his child, he decided to leave her the apartment in the family compound. In addition to the monthly child support, he would give her 1,000 yuan as divorce compensation. At this stage, he has done all he possibly can. Leander leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, and Rosie's image surfaced once again in his mind. He could not forget the way her eyes curved into a gentle smile, nor could he forget her pale face lying on the hospital bed. But most of all, he couldn't forget the mocking look in her eyes as she lay crushed on the ground after the whipping. These scenes flickered through his mind. Leander's heart ached so deeply he struggled to breathe, a single tear sliding from the corner of his eye. If only he hadn't trusted Adam so blindly before, would she still be here with him? It's all his fault. Leander cast his gaze upon the group photo hanging on the wall. When they first got married, Rosie hung group photos of them together in every room, his study included. He had removed and thrown them away several times, but she would secretly hang them back up. In time, he simply gave in to her. Yet now, that very group photo was the only thing he had to remember her by. In the group photo, Rosie wore a red flower in her hair, her arm hooked through his, her eyes curved in a look of pure happiness. Leander stroked the group photo on the wall, his usually indifferent dark eyes now filled with longing. "Rosie, where on earth are you? I miss you so much." Chapter 13. The next morning, just as Leander stepped outside, he was abruptly blocked by Ku's mother, who had rushed over, her face icy cold. She raised her hand and slapped his handsome face. "Leander, I am utterly disappointed in you." Leander had never gotten along well with Ku's mother since childhood. As a child, she forced Leander to attend the youth class he hated every day, 7 days a week without a single day off. Later, she pressured him into marrying Rosie, after which the bond between mother and son grew weak, and they rarely stayed in touch. She arrived suddenly, and he was taken aback. "What are you doing here?" Leander lowered his gaze and spoke calmly. Upon hearing this, Ku's mother spoke sternly. "I'm here because I don't want you to make a grave mistake. Leander, I know you didn't want to marry Rosie when you were forced. Now that you've married Adam, I didn't object. It's only been a few days, and you already want a divorce? I'm telling you, Adam is now carrying a child of the Ku household, and I will not allow this divorce." "Give up that notion." Ku's mother values bloodlines above all else. She would never allow a child of the Ku household to be cast aside. Leander immediately understood that this was Adam behind the scenes, stirring things up. She truly had a cunning plan to avoid divorcing him. She went as far as involving his mother. Leander took a deep breath, stifling the rage inside him, his gaze cold as he said, "You don't need to make decisions for me anymore. This marriage is over." He turned to leave but was grabbed by Ku's mother. The next moment, her icy voice rang out, unyielding, "Leander, my decision is final. I've already brought Adam back to the old residence to rest. I've informed your superiors. No one will approve your divorce certificate." At this moment, Leander's long-suppressed emotions finally burst forth. He shook off her grip, a flicker of sorrow in his eyes. "Mother, have you ever once considered my joys and sorrows over all these years? Have you ever truly thought about me?" Hearing his accusation, Ku's mother furrowed her brow. "Everything I've done all these years was for you." "For me?" Leander's eyes grew darker with sorrow. "When I was young, you ignored my wishes and signed me up for countless youth classes I hated. Later, for the honor of the Ku household, you made me give up the university entrance exam and join the army. Then you forced me to marry Rosie, and now that I want a divorce, you refuse." None of this was for me, you only cared about the Koo household's reputation. Leander's every word was like a poison needle, thrust painfully into Koo's mother's heart. Having married into the Koo household all these years, she had always tried to be a good wife and mother. Now, with Adam left behind, it was only for the child in her womb. Yet now, despite his high position, he resented everything she had done. Koo's mother closed her eyes, swallowing her words of explanation. When she opened them again, her eyes were strikingly clear. Their eyes met, locking in midair. Koo's mother's gaze remained cold and unyielding. Leander, everything I have done was for your own good. One day, you will come to understand my painstaking efforts. No matter what you say, there's no room for compromise on this matter. Leander stood motionless until Koo's mother's figure vanished from sight. Only then did he slam his fist into the wall. He had spent his entire life under others' control, powerless even over his own marriage. How utterly ridiculous. Chapter 14. Under Koo's mother's protection, Adam settled comfortably in the old residence of the Koo household to rest and nurture the pregnancy. Today is Koo's father's birthday. In the past, Leander was always busy and seldom came home to celebrate his birthday. But today, he made an exception and came. The moment Leander appeared, Adam's eyes flickered with panic, and she turned to walk into the room. Quick as a flash, he grabbed her wrist, blocking her path. The uncle and aunt chatting on the sofa caught sight of this and immediately began to tease. Look at how deeply Leander loves his wife. Indeed, Leander has truly married his one true love this time. Leander ignored their remarks and pulled Adam straight into the guest room. Bang! The door to the guest room slammed shut abruptly. Adam was thrown onto the bed by him. Seeing the dark storm brewing in his eyes, her heart clenched. She gripped her belly tightly and warned, Leander, I'm carrying your child. If you so much as touch me, my mother won't let you off. In a moment of crisis, she had no choice but to invoke Koo's mother as a threat. Upon hearing this, Leander closed in relentlessly, finally harshly gripping her chin. Adam, you don't actually think she can hold me down, do you? Seeing the unmistakable disgust in his eyes, Adam stopped pretending. She sneered in reply. Or what? Now that no one will approve your divorce certificate, I'm the only wife you'll ever have. Leander, I only got this far because you pushed me here. I've stopped having people hunt down Rosie, and this is the only wrong thing I've done. Why can't you forgive me? Why do you keep driving me into a dead end? Again and again? She couldn't understand why the intense, sincere love they once shared had turned into this after Rosie left. Leander let out a cold sneer from his throat, his gaze growing colder toward her. Because you changed. Adam, I loved who you used to be. The you now just makes me sick. Makes you sick. He actually found her disgusting? And yet she framed Rosie just to win his heart. Adam suddenly laughed with reddened eyes, leaping up to grab his collar with both hands. Voice wild, Leander, if you hate me so much, then let's be tangled for life. You're insane, Leander shouted angrily. Yes, I am insane. The moment you called out Rosie's name in bed, Leander, I lost my mind. For life or death, I will never let you even have the chance to see Rosie. She and Leander had been in love for so many years. Even if he wouldn't admit it, she could clearly see that he had already fallen for Rosie beneath the surface. Leander raised his hand and pushed him away, his gaze dark and fierce. Adam, you will regret this. With that, he turned and left. A loud bang echoed. The door slammed shut with a heavy thud. Adam collapsed onto the bed, tears blurring his vision. Do you regret it? She does not regret it. Since she can no longer win Leander's heart, she must firmly seize her place as the Koo household's young mistress. After all those years of companionship, she deserves to claim either love or power. Leaving the Koo household's old residence, Leander rode his bicycle back to the family compound. He stumbled into the study, eyes vacant as he stared at the group photo on the wall, a single tear slipping down uncontrollably. From now on, he would be entangled for a lifetime with the one he despises, and Rosie would vanish from his life for good. At the thought of this, Leander felt a pain so fierce in his chest he could barely breathe. All his life, he would never attain what he truly longed for. Is this his fate? Chapter 15. 5 years later, Rosie dragged her suitcase and, looking through the glass at the city, both familiar and strange, her thoughts suddenly drifted away. After 5 years, the provincial capital had changed greatly. She had changed greatly as well. During those 5 years in City B, she abandoned dancing, devoted herself to business studies, and founded her own clothing company. Because she was a woman, she faced scheming and harsh treatment everywhere in City B. Yet she overcame every obstacle with swift, decisive action. Now, no one dares to cross her anymore. Today, she returned to the provincial capital because they were setting up a branch office there. After much deliberation, they still wanted her to come for negotiations. After all, she had lived in the provincial capital before, understood its social nuances, and had far more connections than they did. At first, Rosie refused. Returning to the provincial capital meant facing Leander. She didn't want any contact with him, since everything she suffered was because of him. But when she thought about the branch office, she hesitated briefly and finally agreed. After all, what happened between her and Leander was long ago. Even if they met, what was there to fear? Ding ding ding. The pager's ringing abruptly pulled her from her wandering thoughts. Rosie pulled out the pager and saw a message from Logan. Rosie, stay safe. I'll come see you in a week. After reading the message, Rosie's eyes curved into a smile. During her 5 years in City B, not only did her career take off, but she also found true love. She met Logan when they were launching their startup. At that time, she was despised and constantly oppressed by the other partners, who believed a woman had no place at the forefront and accused her of disrespecting tradition and decorum. It was at that very moment that Logan stood up as the sole defender of her. She would never forget the words he spoke that day. Everyone, we are gathered here today to work towards a win-win outcome. Yet you cling stubbornly to your chauvinism, relentlessly suppressing such an exceptional woman. What exactly do you hope to accomplish? His words hit the ground like thunder, instantly silencing everyone present. From that moment on, she and Logan often crossed paths, frequently discussing work, sharing dinners, and walking together in the evenings. They shared the same worldview and were driven by identical goals. He is highly capable, able to strike straight at the flaws in her startup plan. With him by her side, Rosie feels deeply reassured. By their 6th month of acquaintance, Logan had confessed to her, and from that moment, their romance blossomed effortlessly. She once believed she would grow old alone, but after meeting Logan, Rosie realized that only by abandoning a worthless man could she embrace true happiness, and Logan was the greatest gift heaven had bestowed upon her. Shaking off the wandering thoughts in her mind, Rosie turned from the train station and headed straight to the guest house to rest, preparing to search for the right storefront the following day. When he found out she was returning to the provincial capital, Logan quietly took it upon himself to arrange everything for her. He not only mapped out her entire route but also sketched the city center to assist her with her negotiations. And everything he did, Rosie witnessed with her own eyes. Chapter 16. Since Rosie left, Leander devoted himself entirely to his work. In these 5 years, he steadily advanced within the military unit, becoming an indispensable asset to his superiors. Even with the position he holds today, Leander carries a lingering regret. That regret stems from not yet discovering any news of Rosie. Knock, knock, knock. The knocking at the door outside interrupted his drifting thoughts. Captain Koo, there is a phone call for you. The operator's call rang at the door. Leander Koo stood up and went downstairs. The call connected. An Adam's tender voice came through the receiver. Leander, can you come back to the old residence tonight to be with Ambrose? Our son has been missing you so much these past few days. He's only 4 years old and truly needs his father's presence. I told Mother about it, and she said you should come back tonight. She'll even cook your favorite dishes. Whenever she mentioned Koo's mother, Leander refused, the words hanging on the edge of his tongue but never spoken. He knew full well that if he didn't return today, tomorrow Koo's mother would appear at the military unit. Over these 5 years, this had happened many times. Got it. After a pause, Leander replied coldly and hung up immediately. He hung up and turned back to his office. Leander picked up the group photo of himself and Rosie from the desk, his eyes flooding with longing. Late at night, Leander returned to the old residence and saw Ambrose furiously pulling the servant's hair, shouting, "You terrible person! I told you I wouldn't eat vegetables. So why did you put them in? I'll beat you to death." At the sight, His expression shifted abruptly. His thin lips pressed tightly together. Ambrose, stop right there. The next moment, Leander strode forward swiftly, seizing his wrist and shielding the servants behind him. His voice sharp with reproach. Ambrose, who taught you to behave like this? She may be a servant, but she is not your punching bag. Apologize this instant. The Koo household had few heirs. Since Ambrose's birth, he had been indulged and spoiled without limit by Adam and Koo's mother. At such a tender age, he had already mastered the art of bullying through privilege, capriciously beating and berating the servants, and smashing toys in fits of rage at the slightest provocation. Leander was furious about this. Ambrose was only 4 years old. Upon seeing his father's grim expression, he instantly broke into sobs. His cries drew Adam over. Seeing this, Adam quickly shielded Ambrose behind him. Leander, why do you scold Ambrose the moment you come home? He's still little. If he did something wrong, talk to him gently. Don't frighten him, all right? Hearing Adam's defense, Leander's face darkened ominously. Adam, look at what you've spoiled him into, so young and already hitting and yelling. Is this really how you raise a child as his mother? Upon hearing this, Adam finally noticed the servant behind Leander. Her hair was badly pulled out, tears streaming down her face. Seeing this, her expression remained cold and indifferent. She's just a servant. Ambrose pulling her hair a few times, so what? She didn't injure her anywhere else. Her voice was filled with callous indifference, as if the life of a servant meant nothing to her. At that moment, Leander could no longer contain his wrath. He stepped forward, pulled Ambrose beside him, and said coldly, "Since you're so stubborn, from now on, I will take charge of Ambrose's upbringing. He's leaving the old residence with me today." Adam's pupils contracted sharply. Leander, no, Ambrose is my son. He has never been apart from me since he was young. You can't take him away. Since Ambrose was born, Adam felt she finally had someone to rely on. She had always cared for him personally, never entrusting anyone else. Now that Leander wants to take Ambrose away from her, it feels like he's demanding her very life. She absolutely will not agree. You have no right to refuse. Your failure to raise the child properly is your fault, and I won't allow you to keep making mistakes. Though he despised Adam, Ambrose was his biological son. He couldn't bear to see his son raised this way. If it continued, he would be completely broken. Chapter 17. Koo's mother returned home to find them arguing, her most precious grandson still crying loudly. "What are you two fighting about now?" she shouted sharply, cutting off the uproar in the living room. Koo's mother's arrival sparked a flicker of surprise in Adam's eyes. The next moment, she hurried to Koo's mother, her voice trembling. "Mother, please, you must persuade Leander. Ambrose only pulled a servant's hair, and yet Leander wants to take Ambrose away from the old residence. Ambrose is still so young, he cannot be without his mother's care." Adam's anguished cries made Koo's mother knit her brows deeply. Perhaps because of her age, Koo's mother had softened her approach to raising her grandson, not as strict as before, but rather indulgent without limits. It was their indulgence, after all, that bred Ambrose's unruly nature. "Leander, Ambrose is only 4 years old, and you have no experience looking after a child. If you truly believe that living in the old residence will harm Ambrose, I agree you can take him away. But Adam, as Ambrose's biological mother, must come along." For the past 5 years, Adam had lived in the old residence, with her relationship with Leander frozen at a breaking point. Koo's mother didn't want the couple to drift apart. Shifting her gaze, she intended to use this opportunity to have them live together again, to rekindle their relationship. Upon hearing this, Leander's face grew even darker, his hands hanging at his sides suddenly clenching tightly. "Mom, why are you pushing me again?" He simply didn't want Ambrose to go astray. Yet here he was being forced. Meeting the disappointment in his eyes, Koo's mother remained calm and indifferent. "Leander, I'm not forcing you. I'm thinking of Ambrose. A child's growth cannot do without a mother's presence. If you want to take the child away, you must take Adam with you. Otherwise, Ambrose will stay in the old residence." Her tone was serious, not allowing him to refuse. Adam stood obediently by Koo's mother's side. Though life at the old residence was comfortable, she longed to be with Leander too. After all, They were husband and wife. It was unbearable to be apart for so long. Besides, Ambrose could not be without his father's company. If only Leander would relent and allow them to return to the family compound, it would be the best outcome. Time passed moment by moment, until Leander let go of Ambrose's hand and turned to go upstairs. No refusal, no answer. Mom. Leander, what's wrong with him? Adam asked cautiously. It's nothing. He's just thinking. Don't worry. I'll take Ambrose back to the room first. Ku's mother ignored Leander's feelings, holding Ambrose as she went into the room to play. Silence returned to the living room. Adam then turned to face the tearful servant. Her eyes were sharp, like a poisoned blade. In the next moment, she raised her hand and struck the servant across the face. She hit with full force. The servant was sent sprawling to the ground, darkness swirling before her eyes. You wretch! It's because of you that my son cried so bitterly. He only pulled your hair a little, and you're bawling for all to see? Do you think this is your ticket to bed? Let me tell you, don't even think about it. Madam, I swear, I had no improper intentions. The servants wept as they tried to explain, but were met with Adam's fists and kicks. Slowly, the servants' cries for help faded, and only then did she cease her attack. Looking down on the gasping servants, Adam's face was full of contempt. If I catch you crying like that again, you won't have a place in this world. Her icy voice cut through the air, and the servants trembled in fright, their eyes wide with fear. Madam, please don't worry. I promise to behave properly from now on. At her words, Adam finally felt satisfied and turned to go upstairs. Chapter 18. The next morning, Adam was startled awake by a sudden knock at the door. She opened the door to find Leander standing there. For a moment, joy blossomed in Adam's eyes. Leander, why are you here so early? Leander avoided her touch, his voice cold, for Ambrose's future education. I agree that you should go together, but I hope you won't stir up trouble again or do things that make me despise you. Although he didn't want to have anything to do with Adam, for Ambrose's future, he had no choice but to agree to Ku's mother's request. He could see that if his son stayed living in the old residence, his future would be completely ruined. Hearing this, Adam nodded eagerly. Leander, don't worry, I was reckless before, but from now on, I'll only listen to you. Whatever you don't want me to do, I absolutely won't do it. I'll just stick with you and our son and live quietly. Seeing her earnest eyes, Leander's face remained cold and indifferent. Pack your things. Come back with me. With that, he turned and went downstairs. Tears of excitement sparkled in Adam's eyes as she turned back to the room, eager to begin packing. On the way back to the family compound, the three of them sat together in the back seat. For the past 5 years, Leander had been consumed by work, rarely taking more than one day each week to visit Ambrose at the old residence. Their father-son bond was distant, marked more by alienation than warmth. Sensing the cold atmosphere in the car, Adam quickly spoke up. Ambrose, don't you often miss Dad? From now on, we'll all live with him together. Isn't that wonderful? Ambrose sat upright. Upon hearing his mother's voice, his eyes flickered fearfully toward the father beside him. At that moment, the car slowly rolled into the family compound. Leander was the first to step out of the car. Adam, holding Ambrose, followed closely behind him. From today on, you and Ambrose will stay in the second bedroom. I'll arrange a tutor for Ambrose, and he must keep pace with all the youth classes. Hearing this, a flicker of pain flashed through Adam's eyes. Leander, Ambrose is only 4 years old. Isn't this too much for him? Maybe we should wait until he's a bit older. Before she could finish speaking, Leander cut her off coldly. Adam, if you refuse my arrangements, then leave right now. Caught by the chill in his eyes, Adam immediately softened his posture, his voice laced with appeasement. Leander, don't be angry. I misspoke just now. Ambrose's studies will follow your plan. At those words, Leander's expression eased just a little. He turned and went upstairs to his study. Mom, I don't want to stay here. I want to go back to the old residence. At the old residence, Ambrose was the little tyrant. Now, here, he's lost his friends and has to study, too. He refuses. Seeing their son upset, Adam quickly softened her voice to comfort him. Ambrose, This is truly our home. Everything Dad arranged here is for your future. You have to listen and not make Dad angry, okay? Ambrose pouted, raised his hand, and pushed Adam to the ground. You wicked woman. I won't talk to you anymore. I'm going to find Grandma. After saying that, he turned and ran into his room. Adam shook her head helplessly, then glanced back at the family compound, which was still arranged exactly as it had been 5 years ago. There was no sign of another woman's belongings in the house. Seeing this, a flicker of satisfaction gleamed in her eyes. Chapter 19. Today was Rosie's day to negotiate the storefront. She had searched for a long time. This storefront was the one that pleased her most. After half an hour of heated negotiation, Rosie succeeded in renting it. As she stepped out of the building, she pulled out her pager to share the good news with Logan. But before she could finish typing, a sudden, forceful shove struck her right shoulder. Rosie lost her footing and stumbled toward the ground. At that moment, a strong arm caught her around the waist, preventing her from falling. Are you all right? A question came softly to her ear. Rosie shook her head and responded gratefully. I'm fine, sir. Thank you so much just now. Before she could finish speaking, her eyes met those of the person before her. In an instant, Rosie's pupils contracted sharply. She had imagined meeting Leander, but never expected it would be today. And to encounter him like this. Rosie snapped back to reality and turned to leave, only for Leander to grab her wrist firmly. Rosie, is that really you? Leander had come here today in search of a teacher for Ambrose's studies. He never expected to run into Rosie here, the woman he had yearned for all these 5 years. In 5 years, she had changed so much. The youthful innocence had vanished, replaced by a mature composure. Leander, I have nothing to do with you anymore. Please show some respect and let go of me. After saying that, Rosie tried to shake off his grip, but the disparity in strength between them was too great. She was no match for Leander. In the next second, she found herself held tightly in his arms. Rosie, do you know how much I've missed you all these 5 years? I've been searching for you every single day. Do you have any idea how I survived without you? Countless nights after you left, I couldn't sleep a wink. All I ever wanted was to find you. Thank goodness, I finally found you. Please don't leave me this time, okay? Hearing the passion in his voice, Rosie gave a bitter, forced smile. Leander, what kind of false emotion are you putting on? Back then, you made me get a fake marriage certificate for Adam's sake. You played me for so long. I let you go willingly. And now you say you've been searching for me for 5 years? What act are you pulling now? Rosie's cold words cut through Leander's heart like a razor. He trembled, eyes full of pain, and whispered hoarsely, Rosie, at the time, I hadn't faced the truth in my heart. Only after you left did I realize you are the one I truly love. My feelings for Adam were nothing but obsession. Chapter 20. Obsession? Can his obsession erase the wounds she once endured? Rosie, how have you been these past 5 years? I sent many people to find you, but there was no news. I've truly missed you all this time. Can we? Leander's words of plea were cut short by Rosie's sharp interruption. Enough. Don't say another word. She lifted her eyes, her gaze cold and harsh. Leander, you once forced me underwater in the lake because of Adam. When she deliberately triggered my allergy, you desperately protected her and only gave me a bottle of allergy medicine. Later, you humiliated me again and again, all for Adam. I can never forget those things, nor will I ever forgive you. If you think we can resume what we had, you can abandon that thought. I will never forgive you in this lifetime. In both past and present lives, everything he did, she would never forget, even unto death. Forgive? Impossible in this lifetime. The moment those words escaped her lips, Leander's eyes filled with unbearable pain. He tried to speak, to explain, but Rosie abruptly raised her hand, pushing him away before turning sharply and striding off. Leander stood rooted to the spot, her words reverberating in his mind like a crushing weight. He had no face to follow her. After leaving, Rosie returned to the guest house. She had thought that, even if she ran into Leander this time in the provincial capital, her heart wouldn't be stirred so deeply. But now it seems she is utterly incapable of remaining emotionally detached. As calm as still water. She hates Leander. and she will never forgive him. Since meeting Rosie, Leander has been completely unsettled, even losing focus during training. To avoid delaying his work, he postponed all his tasks until tomorrow. Inside the office, Leander stared at the group photo in his hand, his eyes brimming with a storm of emotions. After 5 years, seeing Rosie again filled him with joy and excitement, but recalling the hatred that flashed in her eyes just moments ago, his heart felt as if pierced by a dagger. He truly deserves to die. You did so many hurtful things to Rosie back then. Leander remained in the office for a long time, only leaving when night had fallen. Returning to the family compound, Leander found Ambrose furiously smashing things in the living room. I've told you I don't want to study. You and Dad are both awful. I'm done talking to you. If I have to go to school again tomorrow, I'll hit the teacher. Adam, standing nearby, didn't stop Ambrose's outburst. Instead, he egged him on, saying, all right, I'll talk to Dad so Ambrose can have the day off tomorrow, okay? But you broke so many things. Does your hand hurt? Want Mom to blow on it and make it better? Hearing their conversation, Leander's eyes suddenly hardened with coldness. The next moment, he stepped forward and gripped his wrist tightly. Ambrose, this is only your first day at school and you're already throwing a tantrum. Do you take me for a pushover? Ambrose's face went deathly pale the moment he saw Leander, tears flooding like a dam breaking. Dad, I didn't mean to. Leander's brows furrowed sharply at these words. Do you think I'd fall for that? Tomorrow, I'll personally escort you to school and keep an eye on you. If you dare hit the teacher again, I'll make sure your backside gets punished. His threat hung in the air, and Ambrose broke down in tears. Terrified, Adam, filled with heartache, hurried forward to defend Leander. Don't scare Ambrose like that. He's still so young. Can't you please speak to him gently? Chapter 21. Adam, you were the one who promised to listen to me, which is why I reluctantly let you come along. How can you forget your promise now? If that's the case, tomorrow I will arrange for someone to send you back to the old residence. At these words, Adam's face went pale with anxiety. He quickly gripped his hand and pleaded, Leander, I'm sorry, I misspoke just now. Please don't be angry, okay? From now on, I won't interfere with Ambrose's upbringing anymore. Seeing her pleading expression, Leander couldn't shake the image of Rosie's eyes brimming with hatred from today. It's all her. If it weren't for her, Rosie wouldn't hate him so fiercely. With that thought, Leander jerked his hand free, his voice icy cold. This is your last warning. If you meddle in our child's education again, you'll never see him again. He shoved with all his might. Adam staggered and collapsed flat to the ground, staring at his retreating figure. She suddenly clenched her fists at her sides. Tonight, Leander is acting very strange. Having known him for so many years, he rarely lets his emotions show. But tonight, the look in his eyes as he stares at her is filled with pure hatred and an unrelenting fury. Has he met someone? Why has it come to this? Leander walked into the room. This room once belonged to Rosie. After she left, he moved in, using it as a place to dwell on memories. Surveying the furnishings around him, Leander was overwhelmed with a profound sense of loss. Now, Rosie hates him deeply. Is he truly about to lose her forever? But the very thought that she would vanish completely from his world made Leander feel utterly heartbroken. No! He couldn't just surrender like this. He had wronged her in many ways before, but he was determined to spend the rest of his life making up for those past mistakes. As long as his heart was sincere, he would inevitably win back Rosie. With this resolve, Leander began to formulate a plan in his mind. The next morning, Leander dressed in a navy blue suit and stepped out. He didn't go to the office. Instead, he went directly to the guest house where Rosie was temporarily staying. He waited outside for a long time until a familiar figure emerged from the guest house. Seeing this, Leander's face brightened with joy. He picked up the flowers he'd prepared, hurriedly stepped out of the car, and approached her. Rosie's smile disappeared instantly at the sudden appearance of the man, replaced by a look of disgust. Leander, I made myself perfectly clear to you yesterday. What are you trying to do again today? Hearing her cold words, Leander showed no hint of displeasure on his face. Rosie, I know you hate me now, but I will make amends for all my past mistakes through my actions. Please, just give me one more chance, won't you? He, who had always been arrogant and unyielding, bowed his head before Rosie. Hearing this, Rosie laughed bitterly and slapped the flower from his hand. No, I feel sick just looking at you now. The heated argument between them was witnessed by Adam, who was hiding in the shadows. The moment she saw Rosie appear, she bit her lip hard. Her premonition last night had been right all along. Leander's strange behavior was because Rosie had shown up. Adam's eyes were filled with hatred as she looked at Rosie. She had barely claimed Mrs. Koo's place, and Leander was slowly accepting her presence. But why must she suddenly show up now? Does her arrival mean that everything she's done so far has been for nothing? No. She can't simply sit back and wait to die. Consumed by seething hatred, Adam suppressed the murderous urge within and quietly turned away. Chapter 22. After breaking free from Leander's grasp, Rosie hurried to sign the contract. 5 years have passed, and she never imagined Leander would cling to her so relentlessly. It's clear she must move faster. Once she has the plan fully laid out, she'll return to City B and never see Leander again. After signing the contract, the sky had already darkened. Rosie strode slowly back to the guest house, but just as she rounded the corner, a hand suddenly shot out from behind and clamped over her mouth. Rosie struggled with all her might, but a sharp blow to her neck sent her straight into unconsciousness. When she came to again, she realized her hands and feet were bound. She was plunged into utter darkness. There was no way for her to know where she was. With a creak, the firmly closed door was abruptly pushed open, and a flashlight beam immediately hit her face. The piercing light made her squeeze her eyes shut. At that moment, footsteps slowly drew closer. Rosie, long time no see, a familiar voice rang out, and when Rosie opened her eyes, she saw Adam standing right before her. Their eyes met in midair, and she clearly saw the seething hatred burning in Adam's gaze. Rosie, you're truly despicable. You left 5 years ago, why are you back now? Don't you realize that because of your return, Leander is drifting away from me all over again? Hearing her accusations, Rosie met her gaze with icy calm. She could tell that Adam had suffered greatly over the past 5 years. If her life had been happy, she wouldn't have abducted her the moment she discovered her existence. Adam, don't drag me into what's between you and Leander. I came back only for work. Once it's done, I'll leave. You don't have to see me as a rival. I never intended to fight for Leander. At those words, Adam's expression twisted into madness. I don't believe your lies. Only when you're dead can Leander be mine entirely. So today, you must die. Speaking of which, Adam clapped his hands. Before long, a small figure walked in from outside the door. After clearly recognizing his face, Rosie raised her eyebrows slightly. She was all too familiar with this person. In her previous life, she had raised him for over 10 years, only to end up nurturing an ungrateful wolf. Ambrose, didn't you say you've been exhausted from studying these past few days? Mom made sure you came here today to relax. Come on, let all your frustrations out, Adam said as he handed Ambrose a fruit knife. The moment Ambrose saw the fruit knife, his eyes lit up suddenly. When he's unhappy, he takes pleasure in beating and scolding others. Ever since his father brought him back to the villa, all he does every day is study, with no chance to let off steam. Now that Mom has given him this chance, he's determined to seize it. In the blink of an eye, Ambrose grabbed a knife and drove it straight into Rosie's scapula. With a sharp pft, blood instantly spurted out. Right after, Ambrose called out excitedly, "Mom, I really feel so much more relaxed now." Looking at Ambrose before her, Rosie was overwhelmed with shock. In a past life, Ambrose was mischievous, but under his upbringing, he knew right from wrong and consistently excelled in his studies. But now, he actually takes pleasure in hurting others. It seems Adam has thoroughly spoiled Ambrose. Chapter 23. Ambrose, just relax. So, shall we keep stabbing a few more times? Hearing this, Ambrose clapped his hands excitedly. Yes, yes, I love this game so much. And so, Rosie's left scapula was stabbed as well. A searing pain coursed through her entire body. She trembled with agony, her face growing ever paler. Adam, you'll pay dearly for what you've done. As long as you die, I'm willing to pay any price. Adam's eyes burned with hatred and madness. Rosie's vision blurred. Just as she thought she was about to die, a sudden crash echoed as someone kicked the door open. She turned toward the noise and saw Logan storming in, knocking the knife from Ambrose's hand before kicking Adam aside. Rosie, I'm here. Don't fall asleep. Seeing the face so close to hers, Rosie tried to speak, but she fainted straight into his arms. When she woke up again, Rosie found herself lying in a hospital bed. Her shoulder was also supported by a brace. Just then, the ward door was gently pushed open. She turned toward the sound and saw Logan entering, carrying a thermos. Their gazes met midair. She could clearly see the excitement in his eyes. Logan hurried to her bedside, his voice tinged with concern. Rosie, you're finally awake. Are you in any pain? Should I call the doctor? Hearing this, Rosie smiled and shook her head. I'm fine. No need to call a doctor. From Logan's account, she learned everything that had happened after she fainted. Leander, putting justice above family ties, directly sent Adam to the detention center, letting the police judge his guilt. He also sent Ambrose to the juvenile detention center. Rosie, Leander has been wanting to see you. Do you want to meet him? His gentle voice whispered in her ear. After a moment's thought, Rosie nodded. Let's meet. Some things need to be thoroughly settled. It was 3 days later when she saw Leander again. His eyes were now swollen and bruised. Seeing her pale face, his own grew red with guilt, and his voice trembled as he said, Rosie, it's all my fault. I'm the one who hurt you so deeply. Rosie sighed softly, and after a long pause, said, Leander, the reason I agreed to see you today is not to hear your apology. Can't you see? Every time I'm near you, I end up hurt and hospitalized. Do you really think I can forgive you and reunite with you? As you've seen, I now have a new partner. He loves me and cares for me deeply. Soon, we'll marry and have children, living a happy life together. You were nothing more than a mistake I encountered in life. I've already let go, and I hope you won't continue to haunt me. Otherwise, I will only grow to hate you more. At these words, Leander's chest shook violently. Thinking back, all the wounds she bore were truly because of him. This time, too, it was his relentless entanglement that caused her harm. In that moment, Leander fully understood that true love is about letting go, not clinging on endlessly. Chapter 24. Rosie stayed in the hospital for half a month until her scapula had fully healed. Throughout this time, Logan stayed closely by her side, not only surprising her with different meals every day but also carving out time to finalize every detail of the branch office. Rosie couldn't help but declare she had found a true gem. On the very day Rosie was discharged from the hospital, Adam's judgment was handed down. She was sentenced to 5 years for attempted murder. During this time, Adam even had her relatives reach out to him, hoping she would sign a letter of forgiveness to lessen her sentence. She was never weak-willed, nor would she be swayed to forgive by a single plea. After all, she remembers the wounds from 2 lifetimes all too clearly. This 5-year sentence is the punishment she must bear. The provincial capital is where she grew up, but Rosie doesn't want to come back here anymore, because whenever she arrives, she's reminded of everything that happened before. She refuses to imprison herself in the past, so she will stay in City B from now on to start a new life. As for everything in the provincial capital, she'll leave it entirely in Logan's hands. Everything has come to a final rest. Rosie didn't want to linger any longer in the provincial capital and booked the earliest train back to City B. The train station swarmed with people coming and going. Rosie leaned on Logan's shoulder, her voice tender as she whispered, Alan, once we're back in City B, let's get married. Her sudden words stunned Logan. When he remained silent for a long moment, she waved her hand before his eyes and asked, Logan, don't you want to marry me? Her words reached his ears, and Logan snapped back to reality, pulling her into his arms with excitement. Rosie, I want to. From the very first moment I saw you, I liked you. Marrying you would be the greatest happiness of my life. Logan loves Rosie with a love that reaches deep into his bones. So when he heard this, he was stunned and bewildered, completely at a loss. Yet beyond the shock, there was an overwhelming surge of joy. He was finally going to marry the woman he loved with all his heart. At that moment, the voice of the announcer came through the speakers. Logan took Rosie's hand and led her to the ticket gate for inspection. Leander knew Rosie was leaving the provincial capital today, so he deliberately canceled all his appointments to come to the train station to see her off. He stood in the shadows, watching her leave hand in hand with Logan, until her figure vanished from his sight. A single clear tear slowly traced down from the corner of his eye. He has done so many wrong things in his life. Perhaps this is the punishment fate has given him. To let him lose his true love forever. This punishment is unbearably cruel. So cruel that he will live a lifetime of pain. Leander turned and left the train station, returning to the family compound. He was stopped from going further. Mr. Koo, Miss Adam wants to see you one last time before her imprisonment. Are you available to visit her? Upon hearing this, Leander coldly declined. I don't have time to see her. Please tell Adam that I've already filed for divorce. From now on, we are no longer connected, whether she lives or dies. Don't come looking for me. Leander returned home, staring at the group photo in his hand, Rosie's young face vividly in his mind. She held flowers, running toward him with a beaming smile. Leander, I truly like you. Will you accept my love? He wanted to answer yes, but realized it was only a fantasy. Ultimately, he lost his one true love.